How do you inherit emotional clutter? Is it just from your family? That's what this episode is about. You're listening to Pure Light, where we explore how you can believe in yourself and be happy with who you are. My name is Eiley. I help people do what they feel called to do. I'm a coach, writer, and yoga and meditation teacher. This is episode 143. In the last couple of episodes, I've been talking about emotional clutter, meaning the emotional pain or wounds that we may never really fully process, so they kind of just stay with us in our energetic field. So I talked about my own Estonian emotional clutter and my journey with that. And then I had a conversation with Demetria Jackson about healing old wounds, both individual as well as ancestral trauma. In this episode, I wanted to talk about inherited emotional clutter because it isn't just from our family lineage. It can be from any group we're a part of or any group that we identify with. So on Valentine's Day, I had dinner with a friend from the Kundalini yoga community and her boyfriend. They apparently hadn't decided to do anything to celebrate because my friend and I were going to do something after dinner. And that was totally fine with me because I didn't have any other plans. So I'm sitting in their living room on the couch, and my friend's boyfriend, who's also a Kundalini yoga teacher, says to me, "So what do you think about Premka?" And I could tell by the way he was asking that it was something big, but I had no idea what it was. So I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then both of them were like, "Oh my God, it's been all over Facebook." So I was not on Facebook at that time. And I had totally missed this huge development in the Kundalini community, like the global community for Kundalini yoga. So earlier this year, a book had come out called Premka, White Bird in a Golden Cage, My Life with Yogi Bhajan, by a woman named Pamela Dyson. And the book accused Yogi Bhajan of rape and manipulation. Yogi Bhajan was the master of Kundalini yoga, and he's the man who brought it over to the West in the late 1960s. He passed away in 2004, which was several years before I even heard of the practice. When I got into Kundalini, I heard a lot of people talk about how amazing he was. So teachers would talk about it in their classes. Students would talk about their gratitude towards him. And at White Tantric, facilitators would often tell stories about him, how they worked with him, how close they were with him, and how he changed their lives. And to be honest, that was always a deterrent for me, because when those stories were being told, especially the ones at White Tantric, it always felt like they were being told to show status. So to basically prove that the person telling the story was close to this man, who was basically like a legend to so many people. And there was a weird energy around it for me because it wasn't just gratitude and appreciation. It was like beyond reverence. It was excessive to the point where something didn't quite sit right because it actually felt exclusionary in a way, as if, the fact that people who had met him or people who were students of him thought that they were better, that somehow made everyone else worse. Which meant that, because I didn't have this relationship with him and I hadn't ever been his student, there was something that was like lesser for me. And this was all to the point where it seemed a little cultish. And, it made me question, do I really want to get into this? Because it was a bit weird. But my intuition was telling me I needed to get into Kundalini. And it was so strong that I was willing to look past those things and show up with an open mind. So going back to that moment on the couch, my friends were telling me about the reactions in the community because some people were like, he hasn't done anything wrong. He's innocent. Some people were like, he's guilty. So there was a range of reactions. And honestly, I didn't have enough information to know what I thought at that point. So in addition to the memoir, a paper had been written a few years earlier that resurfaced around the same time that questioned the origins of the teachings of Kundalini yoga. So I was like, I need to look at these things. I need to read these and process this for myself and figure out where I stand. So I bought the book. I got a copy of the paper. I read through both. And as I was reading them, I felt ill, physically ill, because what Pamela described in the book reminded me of one of my previous relationships. There were elements of control and manipulation that Yogi Bhajan was using to keep people in a position where they were serving him. And they were getting benefit from that, but they weren't really free to leave or to make their own choices. So at the time that I was reading these things, I was teaching weekly classes and, I was processing what I was learning. And every week before class started, I would give everyone an update on what I was discovering because I felt a deep sense of responsibility to tell them what I was uncovering, especially because it was so disturbing to me and because it involved the lineage of the teachings. And interestingly, most of my students weren't that concerned. Some of them were like, this kind of thing happens everywhere. So they weren't really worried about it. But I was honestly questioning whether or not I wanted to still teach because I was like, if I don't know what this is or where this came from, like, does that change anything for me? And if so, like, how does it change or what does it change? And also I was like, am I somehow perpetuating harm by sharing these teachings? That was honestly my greatest concern. Because when I got into yoga, it was for my own healing. And when I started teaching, it was to share that with others so that people could heal themselves. So to find out that the person who taught all these healing practices had caused like major harm was traumatizing because it meant that he was not in integrity with his own teachings. And one thing that came out of the book being published is that a bunch of Facebook groups got formed to talk about the book. And so another friend of mine was like, Eiley, I know you're not on Facebook, but you need to see what's going on in these groups. You need to know. You're a teacher. So I met her at a coffee shop one afternoon. This was before COVID. It was probably like a week or two before everything kind of got shut down. We were sitting at a table. She gave me her phone. And I sat there for probably about 3 hours, scrolling, reading, watching videos, and really taking in everything that had surfaced as a result of the book. And the stuff that had surfaced included more victims and survivors, people who were also molested, raped, abused, not only sexually, but with physical violence as well. And I was like, oh my God, this is so disturbing. So I would read or watch something, and then my friend and I would talk about it and process it because she had already looked at most of it. And at that point in time, I was also scheduled to teach at the Estonian Kundalini Yoga Festival this summer, so in July. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I want to teach Kundalini Yoga ever again. Like, I don't know if I want to practice it. I don't know if I want to share it with anyone. And I ended up having a conversation with the festival organizer, Prabhudeep, after I met my friend at the coffee shop, but before everything kind of got shut down. And he told me from his perspective, it's never been about the teacher, but about the teachings, and that they were still going to go ahead with the festival, but not have Yogi Bhajan references or pictures or anything like that. So I said to him, when would you need to know by, whether or not I'm coming? And he was like, right now. And so I took a second and I focused on what I was feeling in my body. And even though there was all this pain and anger and like grief around all the stuff around Yogi Bhajan, there was still this peace and expansiveness with respect to the community and with respect to the practice itself. So I said, I'll come, but it has to be on my terms. So Kundalini has a lot of rules and rituals that you're supposed to follow as a teacher. And some of them I followed, some of them I haven't, because they never felt like they were in alignment for me. So I said to him, I may not wear white, which Kundalini teachers are supposed to do according to Yogi Bhajan. I also said I'm not going to wear a head covering because I had given that up a couple years ago. I also said I may not tune in. Tuning in is starting the class with the traditional mantra for Kundalini. And I was very aware, as I said this, that I may be rejected, that he might be like, you know what, that's not going to work. We want you to stick to the traditions. But he was like, awesome. And it felt like such a relief to me because it meant that I was free to be myself and to be myself as a Kundalini teacher. And actually, before Demetria and I recorded the last episode, because she's also a Kundalini teacher, we had the chance to catch up. And she said to me, "How are you doing with all the Yogi Bhajan stuff?" And I said, "I just got over it like in the last week or two." And she was like, "Me too." One of the things that helped me see that I was over it was something that I did at a virtual retreat recently. So we were on Zoom with a large group of people. It was probably about 20 people, all in one room. But you had your partner's video pinned, so you could only see them and they were taking up like your whole screen. And you were supposed to look into your partner's eyes and at the same time hold your arms up in a V, like at about a 60-degree angle. It's a pose from Kundalini called Ego Eradicator. And it gets tiring when you hold it. I think we were probably in that position for about 8 to 10 minutes. And I think a lot of people were struggling. And when it was over, I was like, fuck, man, I want more. I was so energized by that. This is the first year since 2013 that I haven't done White Tantric because of COVID. They all got canceled. In the last few years, I've probably done like 4 to 7 days of White Tantric each year. And so I was so grateful to have that little taste of it, because White Tantric is usually like a day-long workshop. It's a day-long meditation workshop that you do with a partner on a mat, surrounded by a couple of hundred or potentially a couple of thousand people, depending on where you do it. And anyway, that little taste of it virtually over Zoom reminded me of how much I love it and how much it really does something for me. Like, I got so much joy and energy from doing that. So it's not really about Yogi Bhajan. It's about what the practice can do for me. And as long as it continues to fuel my energy and my growth, I'm going to keep doing it. I also found something recently that I wrote a long time ago. It says, "If yoga is the path to inner peace, Kundalini is like the superhighway." And I stand by that. It has more immediate results and it makes deeper states of meditation more accessible more easily because of the nature of the instructions. So I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep teaching Kundalini, especially meditation practices. It took me about 7 or 8 months to process the feelings I had about the book and the paper, because I felt conflicted about it for a long time. Because I was like, I like it, but how can I do it if there's all this pain and all these problems that have been caused? But right now, I feel like I've worked through that pain for myself. I don't feel conflicted about it anymore. I feel like I'm free to use it in ways that serve me and serve my clients. I often do Kundalini meditations as part of my coaching sessions. I feel like I've processed the pain that I inherited as a result of becoming part of that community. Pain that wasn't really mine to begin with, but that I experienced as a result of my choice to pursue that path. Inherited emotional clutter doesn't just come from your family. It can also come from the groups that you're part of by choice. But no matter where the pain comes from, it's in you for you to process and to grow and evolve from it. If you're interested in trying some Kundalini meditations, I'll include links to guided practices for you in the show notes. Go to purelightpodcast.com to find them under episode 143. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, may you be guided by your light.